This episode of Twin Cities Trekkies is brought to you by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor before, let me explain. First of all, it's free. There are creation tools that help you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership required. They'll also help you to distribute your podcast so it can be heard on many different platforms, such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's all you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Okay, everyone, welcome to episode 19 of Twin Cities Trekkies. I am Wes.
And I'm Kenzie.
And today, we're continuing our series of list kind of episodes of Star Trek. This week, it is about the underrated episodes of Star Trek. So these are episodes that we feel are good. But if you're rewatching them, they might think they fly underneath their radar. I think they fly underneath their rewatch radar. I mean, there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
So, and I know that people might mention their favorite episodes from the original series, like the Doomsday Machine or Mirror Mirror, or when it comes to Next Generation, Best of Both Worlds immediately comes to mind. Cause and Effect. Those episodes, immediately come into fans' minds when they think, oh, what's your favorite episode? And stuff like that. So I know there's a lot of underrated episodes, and, it's crazy. We have 800 some odd episodes now.
There's a lot to kind of
choose
through.
Yeah,
that. This list was a little harder for me to put together because I had to think a lot. Because it's I obviously think a lot about ones that are important to me, but they usually end up aligning with pretty well rated episodes where I'm like, oh yeah, I guess. But it is hard. I'm
it's a little. I mean,
yeah.
I'm glad I challenged you, Kenzie, with those.
Yeah.
So I am glad I challenged you with those. So to get in touch with us is simple. Simply send us an email. It's tctrekkiespodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to send us an email with anything you'd like to say. If you have a reaction to one of our episodes, or if you have an episode suggestion or stuff like that, we'll definitely credit you if you have an episode suggestion for us. That'd be, it'll definitely give you a shout out for that. We definitely, if you want to put it up on a Facebook comment on one of our episodes, that's perfectly fine too, or Instagram post, just comment on either one. Handle is TC Trekkies Pod for both Facebook and Instagram. And to send us voice messages, that's perfectly fine too. We would love to hear your lovely voice. Again, go to anchor.fm/Twin Cities Trekkies. Click on that little message button at the bottom of the screen, and there should be options for you to leave voice messages. It can be any length of messages you have. I think there's a time limit, but I'm not 100% sure. I can look into that and let you guys know next time. It's once you do leave a voice message, it automatically sends an email from Anchor to us, and we'll definitely play it for you. Your comments. So just keep in mind that any comments you may leave, vocal or written, may be featured in a future episode of this podcast. Okay, underrated episodes of Star Trek. Um, and like I said before, I'm glad I challenged you with this one, Kenzie, because I know there are a lot of underrated episodes from any of the shows. Um,
Yeah,
not necessarily from
it's
not necessarily from Discovery or Picard or Lower Decks, but from the other 5 shows. Definitely. There are 6 shows, as I say, including the animated show. Um, animated series from the 70s.
yeah, because these are like just like going through and finding episodes that people tend to just skip over. You don't
Mhm.
hear mentioned a lot, and I feel like that's kind of the goal of these. But it's also like I had to go back and forth over and over of like thinking because there's so many that I end up referencing where I'm like, wait, like I guess that's a pretty popular episode, or like something that I think gets referenced, or is like a groundbreaking episode.
Mhm.
But I I definitely I try to think of like guilty pleasure episodes, like things that I really liked learning about. I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of them have to do with the doctor. Like I like all of the
Yeah.
doctors, like offshoots of stories.
Mhm.
Like I really liked like I guess so for me a lot of my underrated stuff comes from Voyager because I have always felt like Voyager was kind of underrated. I meet a lot of people where they're either really hardcore Next Generation fans or really hardcore Deep Space Nine fans, like being like those are the foundational like big series, and
Mhm.
understandably so. But I feel like a lot of times people are like, Voyager though, like kind of reacting badly to it being like, well, they have Threshold, and I'm like, I know, but like, come on, there's different writers.
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna start with one from Voyager actually, and I'm gonna mention it right now because you mentioned one. You mentioned most of them involve the Doctor. The episode "Real Life."
Yes, that's one of my ones on my list is real life,
Yeah.
holographic family time.
Yes. And I love this episode. I love this
Yeah,
underrated episode. It's a very underrated episode for a reason. Um, it's because most people tend to skip over this episode. But here's the deal. It's the ending. The ending gets me.
yeah,
The ending is like an ER episode.
yeah.
It gets me crying every single time.
It
The
is. It's sad,
it's
but like
so yeah.
but he learns so much from it. Like it's like this whole
Yes.
developing story about the doctor and
Hmm.
trying to like come to terms with learning a bunch of life lessons about real life. Like
Yeah,
he gets it.
exactly. Yeah, and it's
He'll
like,
never and like he has to make a tough decision of like his like make this super tough decision of choosing to like continue on with the life on Voyager and never say bye to his family, and
hmm
he'll never have the chance to have that experience again. But yeah, but then it's like he realizes that even if he chose his family, he's missing the whole point of what it means to have a family. So that's
hmm
kind of the decision he ends up making.
yeah, and it's just like it's about the Doctor making this holographic family. First, it's too perfect. Um, which a lot of people can say about the writing on Next Generation that the characters were written too perfectly. Perfect
Yeah.
humans don't exist. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, but then Torres and Kes join in for dinner at the home, at the holographic home, and Torres
Yep.
says, "This isn't real life. You need to make some alterations." So
Yeah.
he allows her to make alterations to the point where his son's rebellious, his daughter is like a risk taker, his wife works, um, a lot of real life things, and then it goes into this like really sad ending, and then he deactivates it, and then he doesn't want to deal with it, and it's after this conversation with Tom Paris, he says like, you'll never experience the real life because what it means to have a family without going through the pain that we all share
Yeah.
because we all left someone behind when we were stranded here.
Yep.
Uh, so and it's and
He chooses to go back into the program and
and
sit with
deal
his
with and
dying.
see his daughter dying from a
Yeah.
Parisi Squares accident. Um, and the ending gets me every time. It gets me
Yep.
crying.
I
It,
know
it,
it's
it,
just sad, but
it gets me
it's
crying.
a life
It
lesson he learns.
gets me crying just thinking about it. um, just thinking about that ending, and it's like and it's wonderfully acted. The whole entire ending is wonderfully acted by all three guest actors and Robert Picardo. Um, yeah, and it's just like the ending of an ER episode where a patient dies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Robert Picardo actually said once. Um, I think he did it for the third season DVD set. He did an interview. I think it was like one of those character profile special features, and he mentioned real life, and he said like, "Oh, the ending's like an ER episode," it's just felt like an episode of ER. And I love ER, but the show ER. So and it was just like the ending of that episode where like a medical drama where a patient dies at the end. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just I think that's one of the most underrated episodes of Star Trek ever because it's not. I mean, it's just a lot of character development for the Doctor. And he had the
Yep.
most growth in season 3 with getting the mobile emitter, being able to move beyond sick bay and the holodeck and stuff like that. But this is definitely another stepping stone for him to be a more realized character. Because before he got the mobile emitter and stuff like that, he was a very
He stuck to his job and very much like a hologram, emergency hologram.
just a hologram who did his job, you know, with no
Yeah.
bedside manner, with no bedside manner. And then once he got the mobile emitter and able to like have relationships and being treated like a member of the crew, he grew up. His character grew a lot in the third
Mm-hmm.
season of Voyager. It definitely made a lot of progress. I think out of all the characters from Voyager, even with Seven, I think he got the most character growth. Um,
Yeah.
the Doctor had the most
As
character
well
growth
as
out of the whole
I
7
feel like
years.
Neelix too.
Yep, him and
Neelix is
Neelix.
another like where going from being pretty hated because of just how ridiculous his character is, but then it becomes endearing because over time it's like, you guys would be kind of screwed without these two. Like
Yeah,
they both end up being characters that they rely really heavily on like surviving.
yeah. Okay, Kenzie, why don't you mention one of yours?
Yeah, I think in Voyager, definitely for me, I have to say 1159
Oh,
or
the
yeah,
one of
I like that one.
the one with the Millennium Gate.
Um,
Okay.
yes. And then Fair Trade
Oh
is
yes, definitely fair trade. I was going to mention that one too. That's also from
yeah.
season 3, and I like
Yep.
the ending is good too. I mentioned this before in one of our episodes before. The ending of Neelix and Janeway. Janeway brings up the sense of family cones in a little bit
Yeah.
prominent in the third season, more so in season 4 when Seven joins when Jerry Ryan joins the cast.
Yep.
But the sense of family and the feeling of Voyager as home um is
And
start
making all these people your family too.
yes, and it happens a lot in season 3, especially once they move past the Kazon.
Yep.
um and they made that thing a thing. And the ending scene with Neelix and Janeway representing him for what he did on that outpost and stuff like that. And he said, "I'm prepared to lead the ship, Captain." He's like, "Oh no, that's not that easy. You have
Yeah.
it's not that easy. You don't
And
walk
I
away. You
those
don't walk
episodes
away.
with
You don't
yeah,
walk.
with Neelix, like Jetrel as well. Like that
Yes.
one is another like Neelix story of like
Hmm.
we find out a lot about him. And I don't know,
Yes.
I like Neelix as a character. He's like personally one of my favorites, despite people being like, oh, he just too much energy, and I'm like, well, that's why I like him, because I'm the exact same way. So I really like him as a character. But
Yeah.
yeah, Jetrel and Fair Trade were definitely some of
Mhm.
my like underrated episodes. But 1159 is one of those episodes with like Janeway looking back on her history with like the Millennium Gate and everything.
Mhm.
And I thought that was kind of a cool. I like those episodes where they do like some deep dive into history. Like
Mhm.
I just think that's kind of a cool episodes. Just like in at least for Deep Space Nine, I have a similar episode for that. What is it? Far Beyond the Stars.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
and that's one of my other like I really like that episode. Like one of those kind of deep dives into the past again. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
so I really like one too.
Yeah, mostly when people mention Deep Space Nine, the two episodes they mention all the time are from the sixth year. It's the one you just mentioned, the Far
Yep.
Beyond the Stars, and the other one in the Pale Moonlight. In the Pale Moonlight, the one where
Yep.
Cisco tricks the Romulans into joining the Federation side of the war. Uh,
Yeah.
those are the two episodes I remember. They're always mentioned, always do.
Mhm.
Whenever they mention that top 10 list of DS9 episodes, those two episodes are usually towards the top of the list.
Yeah,
Um,
and but that one was hard for me because I'm like, it's not really underrated, is it? Like, but it makes me think of like
yeah,
1159, which
yeah,
that's like I feel like a little more of an underrated episode
yeah, yeah,
compared to that one. So
yeah.
it's definitely like
11:59. Yeah,
yeah, 1159. I really like that one.
yep. And you mentioned Jetro. That's
Yep.
a good one. That's that the drills of like I love it for the development of Neelix too, like you said. Like
Yes. Yep.
yeah, the Neelix character grew in that episode, especially at the end where he forgives Dr. Jetrel for what
Mm-hmm.
he did, and he dies, and Jetrel dies, knowing that Neelix forgave him for what he did to his family. Um, and I think that's great. I think that's great. About Neelix. Another one of Neelix episode that I enjoy that I mentioned, I think is an underrated episode, is Mortal Coil. The one
Yeah.
where the
Mortal
one where
Coil.
the one where he dies and comes back thanks to Seven.
Mm-hmm.
But so I think that, and then there's all conflict about him and his afterlife, like questioning his beliefs and stuff like that.
Yep.
Like the guiding tree and stuff like that, and it's another like episode where he's like trying to get away from his obligations as part of the crew, like being a
Yeah.
godfather to Naomi, or being the guide for the crew, or something like that, or
Mm-hmm.
ambassador. You know, um, yeah. So Mortal Coil definitely is an underrated episode for me
Yeah.
in terms of like,
And like the doctor, besides the one that you mentioned with real life, I like Critical Care, which is
yes,
like he's
yes,
taken and forced to work like in a hospital on a planet that's like choosing them to be like they only triage by how useful they are in society. And it's
yes.
like, and he's like, that's super messed up,
Mm-hmm.
but he can't, he can't fight his own programming for the most part. But it's just like it
Mm-hmm.
does bring about like a big conversation about like like our like healthcare system and
Yep.
stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
how that actually works. And I've always liked that episode. It's like if you want to watch something that feels a little more like on the nose for current events, like something that you can watch and people can understand what's going on without having to know much about Star Trek, that's one of those where I'm like, it's a good episode to like just like jump in and be like, this is like how like Star Trek has a bunch of these episodes where they kind of like on the nose talk about topics in a
Mm-hmm.
different light to like shed light on that these are still conversations that are really complicated and they're happening, and how do we like morally deal with them.
Yeah, and it's how they were triaged based upon how not there's not useful in society, but definitely how they were what was it? How what class they were in society. That's what it was. Um Definitely for critical care. Definitely one that
Yeah.
hits on the nose about our healthcare system in this country. Um, it wasn't necessarily a problem then, but definitely if you watch it now, you go like, "Hey, this is hitting on the nose right now." 21 years after it aired. So, but definitely, definitely, and don't forget, Mr. Feeney is the voice of the allocator.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, William
Another
Daniels.
another
Yeah,
little a little
yeah,
guest star appearance where it's like, hey.
yeah. It's William Daniels. You know, he just turned 94 this year, so he's still alive. Mr. Feeney is the voice of the allocator. Um,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're older, Kit or the guy from St. Elsewhere. If you're
Yeah.
older, if you're old, if you're listening to this and you're older, of a certain age, you would remember him as Kit or I forgot the character in St. Elsewhere, but he was in that show too. Um, but definitely an underrated episode. For me from DS9 is actually from its final year, the baseball one. Take Me Out to the Hollow Suite.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. I
Take Me Out
like
to
that one
yeah,
too.
with Cisco playing against his main Vulcan rival in a game of
Mm-hmm.
baseball. Oh
Yeah,
God,
I like.
yeah, and that's what the term of fans of DS9 got from was that episode, Niners. So, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I mean I love Take Me Out to the Hollow Suite. I think it's a very underrated episode because it's just one of those episodes where you go like, hey, we're actually taking a break from all the drama of the Dominion War, and we're gonna do like a fun episode for you. So
Yeah. Which I mean, I like. Yeah, those are always really nice. Like I enjoy, like, because they're doing a lot more like serious episodes than Deep Space Nine because there's a lot of political stuff happening. Like the character development stuff definitely can get very like
mhm.
very intense. But I also really like episodes like despite episodes that are just like funny or like good to watch. Those are usually the funny ones or the cool like stray away from the story ones are also really popular. Like
Mhm.
the episode where they go back to like the 30th anniversary
Oh, Trials and Tribulations.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, Trials and Tribulations is like, I mean, that's like super popular. Like everyone
Yeah.
loves that because it's so well done.
Yeah. And I think
But
we mentioned it with Tashale when we had her on the show.
yep,
So,
yep.
so
Yeah, I really like that episode, but it's like that's not really like an underrated episode. I try to
yeah.
think of uh speaking of like doctors and dealing with really intense like situations of triaging, I guess like Bashir in Nor the Battle to the Strong.
Oh
I
yeah.
like that one.
Yes. I like that one too. I do. It makes me think of the old TV show MASH.
Yeah.
It was like their version of MASH to me. Um, that's when I ever watch the episode, I immediately think of that old show, and I'm a big fan of MASH. So that makes me think of that show because it was, triage everywhere and stuff like that, I like the whole narration by Jake Sisko, talking about his experiences in that hospital, you know, and it was supposed to be a profile of Dr. Bashir, like that's what his original plan was for,
Yeah.
but ended up being like this whole firsthand experience of, being in a triage hospital near the Klingon border, near the one of the border worlds, and dealing with death and destruction.
Yeah. And that's like
Yeah.
a really like intense episode, but like
Hmm.
I just like enjoy it for the character building because like Bashir's kind of a complex character because he like finds out he's like genetically engineered and like all this stuff and it's like brings a whole moral thing of like
Yep.
why in the world would you do that and like not being proud of that like and his dad thinking it's like the best thing he could have ever done for him but it's like not very cool, dad. Like
No.
it's really messed up.
Yeah, Dr. Bashir, I presume. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
That's an underrated episode, especially when we get to
yeah,
learn about his genetically enhanced background and how he
yeah,
how why he was that way.
yeah,
Because he was one of not very one of the not one of the brightest students in his class.
yeah.
Yeah, and
But it's
it's
like against his own like knowledge being genetically engineered, which is really messed up when it's like your parents do things for you that like are morally questionable, but they think it's going to help you in the long run. And it's like, yeah, but that's pretty messed up. Like also kind of a slap in the face being like, so you guys thought I was dumb and decided to like give me something that it's morally questionable.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
those are like definitely like I like episodes around like pretty much all my underrated episodes are ones that focus in on a character quite a
Hmm.
bit to be able to like
Yeah.
like look into their past or like them dealing with something that they have to like work through as a person. But also
Yeah.
like I just love like the off episodes where it's like a little more comedic or lighthearted. Like I'm
Hmm.
always down for like lighthearted episodes like Take Me
Yeah.
Out to the Hollow Suite. Um the one with looking for Parmak in all the wrong places.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Looking for love in all the wrong places with more intense overtones. Klingon love.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, definitely with that. What else? I want to watch the one from Next Generation actually. The episode Clues, the one where they go through this wormhole and they lose an entire day because of this xenophobic species. Um, and Data has to lie to the entire crew.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
intense.
that's an underrated episode. Granted, it was part of Netflix's like top 10 episodes on of streaming for a few years. That's it's a really that's really weird considering it was like in the middle of the fourth year, and it's like one of the most watched episodes on Netflix for I think it was a good year or two. If you had a list of like Star Trek episodes that were like the most streamed, that was like one of the top
Yeah.
top five. Um, was Clues, and it's just I think it's an underrated episode because it's just like it's one of those one-off shows like you mentioned where it's just like it's just an adventure story, and it's just like nothing like everything's hunky dory at the end of the episode. Everything's buttoned up and that kind of thing. Everyone just goes about their merry way. Uh, oh
Hard to
gosh,
think
those.
of. It's
Oh,
hard to think of ones like that. I think I'd say First Contact, the episode,
yes,
is underrated
yeah,
because it's like it's definitely overshadowed. It's just weird. Like First Contact, like all episodes are on like First Contact. Like
yeah, but
that one, I
we get
feel
to see
like
it
is a
from the
little underrated.
aliens' point of view. Yeah,
Yeah.
because normally when we see a Federation crew doing first contact, we see it from the Federation's point of view. This is
Yep.
actually from the aliens' perspective of
Mm-hmm.
how they would view their planet being part of a vast part of the interstellar community, and how the Federation would intend to introduce them to the society and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, and it's really quite good actually. I agree with you on First Contact, that episode, and you got BB Newirth in the episode from Cheers. That was
Mm-hmm.
ooh my alien. I
God.
I
I
remember Jonathan Frakes mentioning that once, and she was like mentioning it
oh
like mentioning her voice saying ooh my alien.
that's awesome. Yeah, I wanted like more. I want to like more like commentary on like people from the series talking about episodes and things because I haven't really like delved into that much of like how do like people who played on the shows feel about certain episodes or certain things like besides like I guess like in Deep Space Nine I always think of Bashir and Garrick, those actors always
yeah.
embracing the idea that they should have been written differently, and I really like their whole commentary around that. But like, I haven't really delved that much into like other series, like being like, how do you feel about this? Besides hearing Jerry Ryan complain about how insane her wardrobe was and the
Yeah.
weirdness on her whole existence on the show.
Yeah, it was all just for ratings. All written
Yeah.
for ratings. Because Voyager would have been canceled. I've heard that if it hadn't been for Jerry Ryan, probably Voyager probably would have been the first show since the original series to be canceled. If it wasn't for her. Yeah, those episodes. There is actually. Oh, Tinker Tenor Doctor Spy.
Oh yes, yes, that's super good too.
Yeah, an underrated episode, and I think I always remember that one with the warp core at the like he's mentioning he's trying to save the ship, and and
Yeah, and
the
it's
computer.
like he's gonna go blow up the warp core. It's like our emergency is just like, oh man.
I got to save the ship. I got to save the ship.
Yeah, that's a super good one too. I actually just rewatched that not too long ago.
Yeah, warning. Warp core breach a lot sooner than you think.
Yeah, I like how he's like imagine. My favorite is just like of the imaginations of like the computer talking, and they're really come on, like actually like
Yeah.
having more dialogue with him, and it's so funny. Like I'm like, how is he not realizing that this is just all like he's just like caught up in his own like daydreaming? I'm like daydreaming gone wrong.
Yeah. I got to save the ship. I got to save the ship.
Yeah.
I know.
That one's
Last chance to be a hero,
funny.
doctor. Get going. Yeah, I just remember that one. Tinkerton Doctor Spy. From the 6th year. Oh, also, the episode Warhead. From season 5. Because it actually
yes.
with the talking smart bomb. And that computer program taking over the doctor, and it's, oh man, I feel bad for Robert Picardo because he was pretty much like a few times he was like yelling at the top of his lungs, and I'm going like, hey, and then it's like, wouldn't your voice be like sore after that, like screaming?
Yeah. I mean, he does like him in general is just great. Like it's all his opera singing and stuff. I'm like, this man's got a voice. He can do it.
Yeah, virtuoso.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a good one. Did you mention that? Yep, with the Komar,
like,
with the Komar, and and him being like admired for being like this operatic singer and stuff like that, and it's fine to have a little fame, but
I remember the first time I was trying to get my best friend Brooke, who does not really like Star Trek. The first episode I showed her was that episode, and she like, I remember just being like, what the heck? Like, this is not at all what I thought Star Trek was going to be like showing her that episode. So she just has this weird thing about the Doctor now being like that he's just this hilarious character because of that whole thing being like, yeah, what was up with that like opera singing hologram Doctor?
Yeah, yeah. Most of the Doctor's episodes I think are underrated.
Yeah.
Especially, there's one from season 2 that I think can be underrated. The episode Projections, the one where the Doctor gets reactivated and the crew is abandoned ship because of the Kazon, and he's allowed to like walk through the entire ship, and it finds out it's all playing in his head, that kind of thing, and Barkley makes an appearance, and
it was like Barkley's in that because like I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's like it's interesting, because he imagines himself as this flesh and blood person. And then it's like,
but he's just actually a hologram.
He's actually a hologram. It's like, if it's like, it's interesting episode. It's that kind of thing. But there's one scene I know from a different episode that I think is underrated. Just one scene in general. It's an episode called Parturition, which is also from season 2, in which Paris and Neelix finally tried to bury their hatchet regarding Kess.
Yeah.
And they have that food fight in the mess hall.
Yeah.
They're throwing spaghetti on each other, and and then they have to go and see Janeway.
Yeah. Oh man.
And she goes, "Well, do you care to explain?" I don't think so at this time, ma'am.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Those like ridiculous fights, between characters, that was the first one I ever saw that was in Star Trek. The next one was in Enterprise between Malcolm Reed and Major Hayes in Enterprise, and they had that big giant duke out fight because Hayes was like Reed was under this paranoid impression that Hayes was gonna take over his job, and they had this fight that spilled out into the corridor and punching each other, and
I that'd be cool to like get like specific episodes, like scenes, like memorable scenes of episodes. I I mean, I just think of all the stuff like you pretty much find on like YouTube, like everybody's favorite scenes or something, or like
Yeah,
an iconic scene or like iconic dialogue between people.
yeah, we can definitely do an episode about that because, um, like I can mention one right now if you want to briefly talk about it.
Yeah.
The one where Spock believes that he killed Kirk on Vulcan, and he said,
Hmm.
and he like smiled and said, "Jim." Oh,
Yeah.
and he's like overcome with emotion, and it's like, oh,
The
I'm
most
pleased to see
emotional.
you,
Yeah.
Captain. Though a little bit weird. I am at a loss to explain it. Um, oh, we haven't done any underrated episodes of the original series.
Yeah.
There is one that I want to mention. Um, and it's court martial. I'm a big fan of the courtroom dramas in
Yep.
Star Trek.
I love any of those, like especially TNG. Like
The
some of those
drumhead,
are really awesome.
like
Yeah.
the drumhead, and that one nails on the head, like regarding certain things happening today, um,
Yep.
stuff like that, and episode court martial too, the one where Kirk is accused of killing a fellow officer, and find out that it was all an a attempt by that officer to discredit him. So
Yep.
that was an underrated episode, underrated courtroom drama episode. Because yeah, the courtroom drama episodes ever in Star Trek are done really well. Um,
Yep.
like
I always enjoy seeing that.
yeah, I mean, none of there's only been I think only like six or so, and there are only six of the shows. Court Martial is one, actually two of them in the original series. The Menagerie plus that episode, Court Martial,
Hmm.
the Drumhead from Next Generation, Dax,
Yep.
Dax, and
Dax.
the Rules of Engagement. That's also I like that one. Rules of Engagement. With the one with Worf being accused of killing a bunch of civilians when it wasn't, you know, happening. It was all meant to discredit him.
Yeah. I think my favorite one is oh, and also I guess like another kind of underrated because like I don't know. I mean Q is really popular, but like I
Yeah.
guess like in Voyager, Death Wish, where he's just
Yes.
like,
Yes.
"Hey, let me die. Can I have the can I seek asylum so that I can just like die?"
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. That's a good one. That's an underrated episode. I would feel because it deals with a Q who wants to be immortal so he can kill himself. I mean, the concept
Hmm.
of suicide. And that kind of thing. And there's another courtroom drama in Voyager from the first year, ex post facto, the one where
Hmm.
Tom Paris gets his memory of apparently killing somebody when it really wasn't him. So,
Yeah.
so
I always like, yeah, there's just some, yeah, I think the one that's insane because I usually see it done in a federate, like the Federation way, which I think is pretty much just runs like how humans that do trials, at least in America, like our justice system trials. But the one with Chief O'Brien, where he is held in court under Cardassian
oh yeah, tribunal.
trial.
Yeah, tribunal.
Yeah, tribunal. I'm
Yep,
like, that's intense because it's like we usually see it under our own legal system lens.
yep, we do. Um, there is one that done for laughs, and that's from Lower Decks. I forgot the name of it now. Veritas. So,
Yeah.
yep, and that was done for laughs. Uh, and that was funny when I first watched it. But yeah, and then Judgment from Enterprise, the one with
Yep.
Archer being accused of being harboring
Bringing on
fugitives.
Empire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
had a lot of vibes of Star Trek Six in there.
Hmm.
Yeah, but definitely we could talk about courtroom dramas on another episode. Definitely could talk about
Yeah.
all of those. Those are episodes we can always talk about.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, some of them are underrated, like ex post facto, the court Rasho episode. Um,
Hmm.
Drumhead's not generally not. Um, Dax definitely is. Um,
Yeah.
and Rules of Engagement is, but but then yeah, there hasn't been really ones in Picard or Discovery yet, but that's because they're serialized.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's a lot harder with some of the newer series because they are like that. So it's like you can't just like pick them out and be like, oh, this is underrated because it's like then you're saying the whole storyline's underrated. I guess the development
yeah,
of it, like it's hard when it's like all a continuation of one another. So then it's like you have to just take the whole plot point. Like I guess this set of episodes seem weak, or this plot point in the serialized shows are a little weak.
yeah. I mean, you could probably classify Magic Made Sailor's Man Go Mad from Discovery, the sole standalone episode so
Yeah,
far, as an underrated episode because it's a timey-wimey cause and effect kind of episode, but
yep,
it's underrated too because it's like not a lot of people. I mean, it depends on whether or not you like Discovery. So,
yeah,
I mean, that line that Lorca says, "No, I don't give a damn." Uh, I mean, it still makes me laugh. Because
mm-hmm.
the way Jason Isaac says it, I don't give a damn. Uh, I mean, it just makes me laugh. I mean,
Yeah,
I think it was meant to make you laugh. I mean, some of the
yeah,
things that because Rainn Wilson did a great job as Harry Mudd. Um,
mm-hmm.
in the 2 episodes he did for Discovery, and in that short trek he did, the Escape Artist. Chippers on the beach somewhere.
Yeah.
Be sipping on
Also,
a
those
jeep.
short tricks are cool. I keep forgetting about referencing those. We got
Yeah.
to briefly. The only time I think we've ever actually brought up was though we had the Tribbles episode, and it's like, oh yeah, that whole
Oh yeah. Trouble
episode.
with Edward. Trouble
Yes.
with Trouble with Edward. Yeah, with the Tribbles commercial at the end. Uh, yeah, but yeah, definitely. I think underrated episodes are like they're few and far between, but it depends on how you feel about them, I guess.
Yeah.
Like like we mentioned, Real Life was one of them, and
Mm-hmm.
oh, I just remembered one. Deadlock. That's like it's not technically like it's more of like full of techno babble. Obviously, it's one of those.
Yeah, it's one of those episodes where I'm like, how often did you guys have to like read your script and really because like I did hear commentary once about just like especially on Voyager how much technical babble they have to use or like they just throw in especially with like engineering like Balana having to just like totally explain something really quickly.
Yes,
That's
totally. Yeah,
crazy.
and it was. I know, and I think Voyager has been accused of like using the simile too often. The like as um
Mm-hmm.
something. Oh, the word was something like
Yeah.
because they use that word too often in Voyager. But that episode Deadlock is full of technobabble. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I applaud everybody who had to who had to say technobabble, like Roxanne Dawson and Kate Mulgrew. uh,
Yeah. I'm
those
sure
two,
it took a lot to have to like go through that whole like it's insane.
yeah,
It's a
it is.
fast paced episode with some
Yes,
fast paced talking.
yeah, some fast-paced talking about and stuff like that. It was just insane how all the techno babble about this whole thing that happened to them and stuff like that. It's insane. And and another one, the 37s, the one with Amelia Earhart. That one flies
Oh
underneath the
yeah,
radar. That one flies underneath the
totally.
radar. Flies underneath the radar. Pardon the
Just
pun.
like her.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
I
With
guess
one of them.
another one of those episodes of like the pocketed, like what the heck is going on? Like how did that even come to be? Like up there with finding the Western civilization type of stuff, where I'm like, oh, abducted and trapped here, cool.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So it would have been interesting to see if they actually took they actually stayed there. I mean, I mean, it's really weird that the first season of the Voyager was actually written to have like 20 episodes, but the first 16 were part of season one, and then four were
Oh,
held over for season two. From what I understand, the 37s was actually written to be season one's finale.
Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
that's why I understand, because it feels like a season finale.
Yeah, I was like, it's a
Rather,
really intense episode.
yeah, because it's the premiere of season two, but it was a holdover from season one, and it was written to be the season one finale, and it feels like it feels like a finale episode. I mean, especially
Yeah.
at towards the end, where Janeway made the announcement of saying if anybody wants to stay behind, they're due to report in Cargo Bay 2 at this one time. And then
Hmm.
Chakotay and Janeway are speculating who's gonna stay or stuff like that. And she
The
goes to
episode that
the
that whole
ending.
episode just reads like a start like original series episode. Like I don't know,
Mhm.
it's very yeah, it's just like a lot for being like in it just feels like a weird placement for an episode. Like not really like it feels almost like season finale-ish, but it also feels weird to be a starting episode
Of
just
a
because
season,
it's such
yeah.
a big yeah.
Yeah, and it feels like a weird way to start the second year. Um, and yeah, they were like there was like 4 or 5 episodes that were held over, and that was one of them.
Yeah.
And it's just it feels like a weary it feels like the ending for a season, because like I forgot to mention, and he goes to the cargo bay, no one's there.
Yeah.
So, and she's like about ready to burst out in tears. Janeway is going like, "Oh, I'm proud of my crew. They're sticking with me." Um,
Yeah. Well, and it's like it's a cool episode because it brings on this like fear that that you're probably never going to see Federation space again because look at these guys and they've just had to figure out how to make it, and live life now here. And
mhm.
that's like the whole like thing of like that feeling of like, okay, does anybody want to give up on this trip? Because I understand now that this is really daunting and where I'm asking a lot. And these guys kind of just said, screw it, and are going to stay here. So do you want to too? And that's kind of a big key point of like, are we going to stick to this trip that's nearly impossible? It seems impossible, or that it's going to take a very, very long time. But
Yeah,
being far from home.
yeah, they're going like, they actually had a conversation about it. Could we really operate this ship with less than 100 people? They like,
Mm-hmm.
and with 75 people, and Chakotay says, I don't think we can operate with less than 100. So but it's like, they're like questioning it, like, do we really want to stay here? And and stuff like that. But it's like a daunting mission to get back to the Alpha Quadrant. What's the point of like what's the point of like you know sticking around if we
Yeah,
can't
it definitely
if
gives that feeling of like because that's like the whole point of like the whole series is that conversation constantly being revisited of like, should we keep going or do we want to say screw it and make something else work?
yeah,
And it's this constant like check in of like, are we sure this is the right decision? Is this the right path?
yeah, this is the right path for us to do, that kind of thing, and it's interesting to that for those kind of like those kind of conflicts. That was a lot happening. That mean those conversations happened a lot in the first 2 years. Like
Yeah, actually everyone's super homesick and is like,
do
oh
we
my
really
gosh, like,
yeah, what do we do?
and
Do
it's
we
daunting.
keep on going, or we just stop right here and make a life for ourselves here?
Yep.
And that's pretty much what they were
But
doing.
that's why
And
it's so powerful, like this episode where it does feel like a season finale thing, and then cutting over to like the dock, like the bay in the next season, and then and being like, look, nobody left. Like you could just
yeah,
like cliffhanger it.
yeah, I know exactly. Like no one left, and it's like no one's gonna leave. And they go like, I mean, and it's kind of interesting that they said like, Chakotay and Janeway had that conversation, and they go like, you know, Janeway says it kind of feels like Janeway's kind of saying like, let's just stay here. I mean,
Yeah,
but then Chakotay says, I would give anything to go back to Earth and see like everything again. You
yeah.
know, So like I think that really happens a lot, especially the conversation about, do we actually keep going or do you actually just stop here and do everything like that? Because there were a lot of opportunities in the first few years that they could have been home right that and then only have it cruelly snatched away from them like they were a child. Uh, right.
I thought the one cool thing about that episode that I was just randomly thinking about was that, like, for technobabble reasons, like the whole thing with the radio in the truck, and then
Yeah.
talking about like why would we have not discovered this? It's like because it's running on AM frequency radio, and we don't detect that because it's too slow. It's an old wavelength form of communication that we just don't
Mm-hmm.
we don't really care about. It's too slow. It's really like it's just too slow for interstellar communication. And when they finally do hear it, it's like an old distress call, which like would make sense for that. So I just thought it was kind of a cool like little thing of around like radio signals and frequencies and how that actually works, and that they kind of delve into that just a little bit.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny about the truck is that they're bringing it in the cargo bay. Paris tries to starts it up. It backfires. It causes Janeway and Taurus to duck.
Yeah. I mean, everyone being like, probably no one's seen a vehicle like that. I mean, ever.
Yeah,
It's more like in a museum, maybe. But I'm
yeah,
assuming cars in the 24th century are not like that.
yeah. They're going like, next time, you want to warn us next time?
Yeah.
Next time, you want to warn us before you turn it on? Aye, Captain.
Yeah.
Oh, and there was one I just watched the other day. It was Gravity, the one with the I think Voyager has a lot of underrated episodes.
Yeah.
Um,
I was like that. That was why it was just so hard, because I'm like, I feel like Voyager in general, like all the other like series, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like most of these episodes I could be like, yep, that's pretty epic episode or something.
mhm.
But the original series and Voyager both felt like ones where I'm like, there's so many, like I don't even think I can make a list, because it's just sort of pops off where I'm like, oh yeah, like that episode or this one now, like.
Yeah, the one with Paris and Tuvok being on that planet, in that sinkhole, that kind of
Mhm.
thing, and Lori Petty's in the episode, um, and stuff like that. So another special guest star.
Yeah, I'm like, there's so many, and we definitely have to do like a thing, like a little deep dive of like
Yeah,
cool like guest stars and what episodes.
yes, definitely. Yeah, that one's an underrated episode because of the way, because of you know, uh, the way Tuvok and Paris, get to more of understanding of each
They
other.
get to have a little bit of an interaction, which is
Yes, and
nice.
yeah,
Like
it's nice to see. Yeah.
development for characters, like where sometimes it feels like they really develop characters, but then they just don't actually that much.
Yes, definitely. And you could say author too from with the Doctor episode, with
Oh,
the
it's scary. I was like, my phone just started going off.
that's weird.
So I'm gonna
Um
turn it on silent. Whoops.
but
Like, call me
yeah.
back later.
Yeah, but definitely that's like you consider author one of them too. The one with the
Yeah.
Photons Be Free hollow novel. So,
Hmm.
yep. And it's I mean, I wish there would be like a follow up to like holographic rights in the newer, like especially in Picard, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
who knows what happened between.
I know. Well, that's like I'm always like thinking about that, because I'm like the Doctor gets to have like a pretty insane like development as a
Mhm,
character, like similar to like paralleling Data, like being like this is a new experience, because they give him way more freedom, because it's like you're going to be running for a long time. You're kind of becoming a crewmate. You're not just like some emergency medical hologram that comes up randomly. You're
mhm.
now like a crew member that's going to have to experience things and be someone to depend on, like a being to depend on.
Yes, yeah,
And
definitely.
like, and
So
now with the like Prodigy coming up, where it's like that Janeway's gonna be a hologram, like,
yeah.
and stuff like that. That's gonna be interesting. But I mean, it's gonna be cool to like. I hope they do a lot more around that, because the fact that Moriarty is just some sentient hologram that exists in Star Trek canon now, like just as like when is he getting released? Is there ever be an episode that just goes back to being like, hey, remember that we were going to look at for a way to like when Voyager comes back, can't they give him that ability because they'll give him one of those thing devices that the Doctor has?
Yeah,
like, are you gonna let him out and be free now?
Yeah, definitely.
When I watched that episode, it was after I'd watched Voyager, and I went back and rewatched it, and it's like, oh yeah, like they could definitely, when Voyager returns, did anybody like go and check in on him and be like, hey bud, here's your what's the name of that device?
Mobile
and
emitter.
Give him one, or did everyone just decide to be like, forget about it? He probably forgot.
Yeah, it's like, it's kind of a shame that things that are just forgotten, for whatever reason, and it's like,
yeah,
I think we should I think down the line we should do an episode about unfinished storylines.
Yeah, or just like weird, like unfinished business. I'm like, is anyone gonna go and check in on that, or like whatever happened to that, or like stuff like Threshold, where like that just ended. Like, what happened to those salamander kids? What happened to anybody? Does anybody know about this? Does anyone in the Federation have knowledge of that actually happening, or was that just like everybody shut up about it and no one say anything?
Yeah. Everyone follows an oath of silence.
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas type of theme there, where I'm like, hey, you guys just gonna casually not bring that up ever again, or what?
Yeah, whatever stays in the Delta Quadrant stays there.
Yeah, kind of feels like that. Like Voyager is kind of that. Like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. It's like, yeah, they kind of do that the whole trip back.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I guess that's about it for our underrated episodes. Any final thoughts?
No, I just want to hear if we didn't mention an episode that you really liked, but you feel is underrated, tell us about it. I feel like there's a lot of them. It could be like a funny episode, campy episode, your personal favorites, like what you feel is underrated about it.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like episode. I forgot. Little Green Men. The one with
I was trying to think of like, because we brought it up like before, that was another one where I'm like, it's underrated, but it's just enjoyable. Like I'll return and watch it.
Yeah, the Ferengis are mistaken as Martians, and
hilarious. I love that episode.
Yeah, it's a great episode because it's just funny. Like it's one of those time travel fish out of water situation, and especially with Quark and Rom and Nog.
Oh, I know, and their whole dynamic is great. Like I always look forward to seeing their characters interacting because the Ferengi are great in Deep Space Nine.
Yep, as opposed to Next Generation.
Yeah, I know. I was like, as an unspoken thing of like compared to how terrible they're represented in Next Generation.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right. So until next time, take care and live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.